Zikalala to speak on the possible impact on South Africa's bid to extradite Bushiri. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Zikalala, and a good place to start as we reacting to those comments from the Justice Minister, calling this blatant act of disrespect towards South Africa's legal system and saying, well, it's sending a dangerous message to the public and to victims of crime. A curious one, though, because one could look at it and say, well, what is the big legal contravention? Has he broken the law, or is it one exercising their right as a South African to freedom of association and going to a church of his choosing?
Good evening to your viewers. You are quite right on that one. If you look at it from the perspective of the law, there's no law that has been broken. Accomplished because there are legal proceedings that have already started in order to extradite Mr. Bushiri to come back and face the music. So the mere attendance of his service in a country in which he's now in is not necessarily a law that has been broken. But what can be looked at is the following sense in terms of saying, let's look at who you are and what you stand for. You are as a Secretary General of a certain political party, which is in Parliament. Let's look at Parliament as the legislature that creates the laws. At some point in time, your party will call upon the Minister of Police and the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development to say to them, account, what activities have you done in order to bring those need to be extradited back to South Africa? And they'll be part and parcel of those questions. Now, if you are going to be seen as engaging or promoting or even saying kudos to someone who was looked for by the South African government, what message is that sending? What you might find, which is worse, is that there are members of the MKP who can be regarded as victims in all the things that Mr. Bushiri is alleged to have committed. So maybe legally speaking, there's nothing wrong with it, but definitely politically and a way of making sure that they're able to appease members of the public to join the MKP, maybe something is wrong in that sense.
And of course, if you're looking at the gravity of the crimes or charges that the Prophet Bushiri is facing, the likes of rape, which are serious charges, one would then get the sense that for optics, it wouldn't look good for the MK party, which is possibly why that statement was issued. What do you make then in terms of legal ramifications on that side? Can the MK party press or have charges leveled against Floyd Shivambu within the party for what he has done by going to the church?
It definitely, if you look at any political party that is there, anything that a member does that is going to bring the name of the political party into disrepute, then that party has got all the rights and powers to say, we are charging you, especially if you are going to occupy the top 5 echelons in terms of the political party. The SG is basically the heart and the brains and the nerve center of any political party that is there. So anyone who's going to say, I am volunteering my services, I'm going to put my intellect and effort into making sure that this party is able to grow, but who engages in this particular fact or in this particular manner. So certainly they've got to be brought to book and they've got to answer here and there. What they need to realize is that once you say you are volunteering your services to becoming the SG of the political party, there are certain things that you can't do because the members of the public can't separate and say we are now dealing with Floyd, who is a member of who was the SG of MKP, and Floyd was in his personal capacity. Whenever a person would see Floyd, they would see that political party. And certainly that's something that he would want to happen because he needs to garner support from the MKP.
So what would the charge then be in this instance? If you're saying, well, they're well within their rights, the MK party could charge Floyd Shivambu, what would the charge be? And I ask this particularly because one could argue that there are other members within the MK party who also have associations with people who have been implicated in the law as being on the wrong side of the law. So if you're charging a Floyd Shivambu, what would the charge actually be?
Well, it would depend on what the constitution of the MKMP is actually saying, but the most general one would be bringing the name of the party into disrepute, especially because you're just not any member that is there. You are the member that is in the executive of the MK party, and you need to behave and act in a manner which is in the brand of the MKP moving forward.
And staying with this then, and perhaps trying to make sense of the gravity of the situation beyond optics, would the same standard be expected of any ordinary citizen? So assuming that it wasn't a Floyd Shivambu, it was an Andy Mahamba who decided, I am going to that church, would the same standard apply if you're looking at perhaps how it would look to others that you're associating with one who has been convicted or rather being charged of a criminal offense in another country?
Not necessarily. We have to look at the impact in hold. So if you're a person that has got influence, tweet which is tweeted by Mr. Floyd Shivambu, it certainly is able to attract a number of individuals If you are going to engage in a manner in which it seems as if you are promoting something which is illegal, promoting something that's still within the courts, then certainly I do not think that it has to be done by them. So we are quite correct. Maybe they would say, no, we are going to forgive you. But because it is him, it goes with his position, it goes with all the things that are there, because you must take it in both ways. Don't take the glory and the shine only when you're stating good things. If you want to promote your name and use your name to kind of support for a political party, even when you're doing bad things, certainly that is still going to follow you.
All right, well, let's broaden this a bit and look at it overall in South Africa and how things are looking in terms of adhering to the law. Just a few months ago, we had heard cautions around aiding and abetting criminals, particularly illegal foreigners in the country, and just, re-emphasizing that it is a criminal offense. And we're seeing more and more having to remind people what is illegal in the country. Do you feel that perhaps it's time for us to look at the legal system more than just words that are being written on papers, but whether or not it's something that South Africans understand as being a criminal offense if they act in a particular way?
I think it's threefold. One is the creating of the laws. The laws are there, but the most important one, which is the second, then you have to go back and ask yourself this question. Do our members of the law enforcement agencies understand what is wrong and what is right, what to act when a person has acted in a wrong manner? And lastly, as a citizen of South Africa, do I know and understand what do I mean when I say I'm pledging my allegiance to South Africa and everything that needs to be done must be done in accordance with the law? That would mean anything that I'm going to engage in, which is going to undermine our legal system, undermine the sovereignty of our country, undermine the independence of even the social cohesion which is being preached about every single day, that at the end of the day, I should not engage in. So there are many things in which we would need to be taught to need to engage in, to need to instill into our members of the community, to say, if we want to better South Africa, this is the manner in which we need to act in, so that we're able to protect the. No one is going to come from any other foreign country and look at South Africa as a playground in which criminality is at play.
And again, as I'm saying, we're having this in a more broader discussion. Do you think then we are a country that's plagued with lawlessness? If you're looking at what's happening around us, the courts are overburdened. Just the other day, we're hearing Gauteng, in fact, saying that they want people to be forced to go to mediation because they simply cannot hear civil matters quickly enough. There's just too many of them. Criminal matters is the same thing. If you're looking at our prisons, those are also overcrowded, and there isn't a sense that, law is being upheld. Your view on that, are we a country that grapples with lawlessness?
We're a country that does not know how to implement the laws that we have, and a country that does not know how to make sure that those that have broken the law suffer the consequences in the best manner. I always say this: anyone who's a criminal, that particular criminal has got either a brother, a mother, a relative, a cousin, or even a friend who knows what they're doing, but they're choosing to keep quiet. Someone who's going to buy stolen goods at the end of the day is aiding and abetting that particular theft that has taken place, but directly or indirectly are still abetting. So if at the end of the day we don't actually does to us, and the shortfall or the suffering in which we're going to suffer other term effect, that's what we need to look at. So we must take a step back and then say, in all the legislation that we have created in Parliament, is there a manner in which there can be the enforcement of that legislation be done in a much more effective manner? And in instances where one has broken the law, are the consequences in which a person suffered enough to act as a deterrent so that they don't do it again? Or are we simply giving individuals that are breaking the law a slap on the wrist and saying to them, you can go home and still continue breaking the law? That's what we need to talk about.
Now, let's talk next steps in this extradition process then, because again, highlighted by Minister that there are additional charges that they would look to level against Prophet Bushiri, particularly relating to how he left the country and those who may have aided and abetted him, hence the question that I posed to you earlier on. How do you see that process unfolding, and what needs to happen now if they are to perhaps get Prophet Bushiri back into the country by December, as we had heard is the plan and intention from the Minister?
Remember that particular fight is still taking place in the country in which they're extraditing him from. So if he has appealed, then it will go to the next stage in terms of their court processes up until their apex court, which will then decide whether they need to come back or not. Now, the test which is going to be utilized is the one of saying, if we send you back to South Africa, are you going to be tried in a fair manner? Are you going to be given an opportunity in order to defend yourself? Are you going to have a right to legal representation? Is your matter going to be treated in a fair basis? But most importantly, in instances where a sentence is going to be given to you, is a death penalty something that you can expect to have as a sentence? The answer to that is no, which ticks all the boxes that makes the extradition a much more proper one and one that may be allowed by the country which we're extraditing him from. Now, when you come to South Africa, then there are two instances or two battles in which you would need to fight. The first one is the one of saying, are you going to deal with the issue of how you left South Africa? Initial charges can then be added upon that one. Before we deal, or we now deal with the true reason of why we're here. The very initial cases in which I've brought into this court, let's make sure that the witnesses are here. My only worry is this, though. The quality and the quantity of the evidence. As time goes on, the quantity and the quality may diminish. People may choose to not give evidence of at all, or they may even die. Documentary evidence may be lost, making it very difficult for the state to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt, or even for him in order to be able to defend themselves. So the faster in which this process is able to move, the better it is for the interest of justice.
And could it fail then on the Malawi side? Is there any way in which the outcome could be that Prophet Bushiri is not extradited to South Africa due to any reasons that the Malawi government or legal system might feel are valid?
It can be. If the court in that particular country in Malawi then says, no, we do not think that a fair trial is going to be given to Mr. Bushiri, then they have every right to say, we are saying no to application. We're not going to extradite him. It has happened before within the Gupta practice. I think it was in Dubai. So if that has taken place, every single country in which you make the application in does have the right to say, we are not satisfied or not persuaded that a person is going to receive a fair trial, so we are going to say no. And remember, the mere fact that he's able to apply to a different court or to a higher court and say that the court got it wrong, can you please look at this matter again, still puts the matter at square one, and it makes the possibility of that particular court saying no very much a reality, which then would mean South Africa must work extra hard to be able to prove that we are going to give him the fairest trial he has ever received. He's going to have access to legal representation as much as he wants. We've done it before within his bail application, which in fact was granted. So if he comes to us, that fair trial is going to be there. And the one which is obvious, we do not subscribe to any death sentences. The only thing that can be made is the long incarceration of the individual and the return of the man or of the funds that have been allegedly stolen. So on those bases, it makes the case of South Africa extraditing him back a much more plausible one. But at the end of the day, as I've stated earlier, the Malawian courts can still say no, we're not allowing him to come back to South Africa.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on that, of course. The big news now is around Floyd Shivambu attending that church service, but that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much for your time. That is Mpumelelo Zikalala, who's a legal analyst, of course, confirming that it's not a criminal offense for Floyd Shivambu to have attended that church service, but optically might not look too good for him